Hello. Hello. Nice to meet you. This is my now third different user group that I've presented to in this building. So I've done the SQL user group and I've done the PowerShell user group, and now I get to meet you guys as well. So, my name's Rob. I am a production SQL DBA by trade, originally once upon a long ago. Now I do stuff. I pretty much go in and do the things people don't realise they need to be done. So DevOps, automation, I do training, all the boring under the hood stuff that nobody really sees. I love PowerShell. I've been doing PowerShell for many years now. I'm lucky enough that I'm involved in organising the PowerShell conference in Europe. I've spoken at the PowerShell conference in Asia. I did the PS Day in London as an organiser and a speaker, and I'm involved in the SQL community as well, so in the user groups, SQL Bits, SQL Relay, all of those sort of things. And I've developed DBA reports as an open source PowerShell module for collecting information from SQL Server estates. I'm one of the founders of DBA Tools, which is is definitely the best PowerShell module for working with SQL, even better than the SQL Server one from Microsoft. And yeah, I know that's recorded. And we're currently developing something called DBA Checks, which is going to use DBA Tools and Pester to develop nice, easy to use validation for your environment. So I'm going to do 2 sessions today. First one is going to be Introduction to TDD with Pester, which is probably going to be more your guys' sort of thing as developers. And the second one is going to be green is good, red is bad, turning your checklists into Pester tests, which might sound like, yeah, what's the point? But actually, hopefully you'll see Pester's got another side that's really, really useful as well. And yeah, I'm an MVP. Microsoft decided that I spent so much time speaking about Microsoft that they'd honour me with that award. I still play cricket, even though the beard is grey, and I fly a drone. I crashed a drone, and now I've bought a new drone. So, Pester. Pester provides a framework for running unit tests to execute and validate PowerShell commands from within PowerShell. It's the first open source thing that Microsoft released with one of their products. So it's embedded inside Windows 10. In the PowerShell you get with Windows 10, you'll have Pester there. Pester was an open source, it still is an open source module. You can see the code on GitHub, you can go and contribute, and it enables you to do unit tests and validate your PowerShell commands. Why do we need to test? We need to test to make sure that our code is working correctly. Even people who use PowerShell nowadays, if I'm working on PowerShell and I'm developing something that's going to recreate an entire environment in Azure, I want to make sure that it's doing what it should be doing. This is something that was really hard as an ops guy, as a production DBA, to get my head around. What was this? How is this important? Why do we need to do this? We need to prevent regressions. So we need to make sure that when we make a change, it still works how it should do. If we upgrade something, it's still going to work with the old stuff if need be. Documentation, because we all love to do documentation. Pester, testing in general, can actually help you to document how you, when you wrote it, expected the code to work. So my command should have an integer as a parameter, because we're never expecting a string to be passed in. If you write a test to make sure that that's happening, and then explain in the title of the test why, people will understand. Always think about the future you. Or the thing, what you call it, a meme, I guess, about always code like the person who's going to follow you is a maniac, axe-wielding psychopath who knows your address. Come on. on. You're allowed to laugh. You've got to have some laughter. It can provide design guidance. My security team say that I must only have Windows groups as logins to my servers. So I can write a unit test whenever I'm adding a login to a server to say that if it's not a group, don't get added. It enables us to refactor. So when we go back and somebody says, oh, can you do this? Or we've upgraded to this version, can it make sure you do this? Or that's really amazing what that does with those SQL servers. Can you get it to do the same with our application servers? If you have good unit tests, it enables you to make sure that all of that happens. So as I said already, if you've got Windows 10, PowerShell version 5 and above, you've already got Pester. Unfortunately, because it's been released with Windows 10 embedded in the operating system, it's not the version that can be updated by the PowerShell Gallery. PowerShell Gallery is a NuGet type repository of PowerShell commands and modules, and it means you have to do this force and this skip publisher check to update it. You might have to do an install module, Pester, to get it to install from the gallery so that then you can update it. The new PowerShell version 6 does not have Pester embedded into it for this very reason. New PowerShell version 6, PowerShell Core. Core because it runs on .NET Core, because it's available cross-platform, but also Core as in only the core things that you need are embedded in PowerShell version 6. Everything else that you want to go and get, you go to the PowerShell Gallery and you install the modules. You build yourself up your packages of modules and commands that you need to do your work. Thank you. If you're not able to run your commands as administrator, you need to use a -scope current user to enable you to install any module, not just Pester. This runs for any single module at all. And something else that I was going to say then, if not. Oh yes. If you work in an environment where you're not allowed to connect your machine to the internet and download strange things, because obviously PowerShell Gallery is hosted by Microsoft, has some pretty good malware scanning on it, but you should never trust anything from the internet anyway, so you should do your own checking on those things, so don't automatically install it. What you can do from the PowerShell Gallery is save -module, save the module down to a path, and then import it from that path once it's passed all the relevant checks that are required to get it on your environment. What's it look like? Looks like this. So we've got to describe. So PowerShell normally goes verb noun, but here we have a different command. Command is one word, it's describe. And we have this is a group of tests. We need to put a name of some description in it, a string. And then we have a curly brace on the same line. Very important that you have the curly brace on the same line. Otherwise you get my favorite PowerShell error ever. It kind of walks up to you and goes, you put the curly brace on the next line. As opposed to the random sea of blood that you sometimes get out of PowerShell when stuff goes wrong. So we have a context. It's a set of tests, a scope. And this is very important. You need to understand that within this block, everything is within the same scope. Just allows you to group your tests together in a certain way. It is the test. It's how we decide that this is a test. We give it a title, put our curly brace on the same name, on the same line, and then we say what I found, pipe sign, should be what I expected, or should not be what I expected, or should be less than what I expected. Whichever way round it needs to be, that's Pester. And the results look like that. Green is good, red is bad. if we're doing environmental validation. If we're doing TDD, green is good. Red, that's also good, because it proves that we've written a good test. We've made sure it fails before we've written our code to pass it. And this GIF doesn't stop looping like I thought it did, but you can see that you get some results, you get a skip test, and it will tell you where things fail. Environmental validation, absolutely brilliant. We will talk about that after the pizza. Free editor allows you to work in all sorts of languages. So you can work in any of these, auto formatting, IntelliSense, all the rest of it. You can add extensions, you can do all sorts of funky stuff. You want to play with Docker, Azure containers, you want to do some of the Git lens blame stuff, all available to you within Visual Studio Code. It is the editor that you should be using for doing any PowerShell creation. One, because it's nice and easy to use, and you can create as many tabs as you need to, so you can just keep building new stuff. It's got a brilliant debugging process, and because there is no more development for the ISE, so the old blue at the bottom and white at the top that you would expect, that will no longer be developed. It will still be available, but it's not going to be in any development, whereas this gets updated every month. So if we did a list available and have a look at all of the available variations of Pester that we've got, 3.4.0, that'll be the one that you've probably got in your machine. That'll be the one that was delivered with your Windows operating system. And as you can see, I've updated mine several times. And at the moment, 4.1.1 is the latest available release. And we'll also have a look at some of the pre-release 4.2 version as well. So when we're just working on a single command, we're going to start by just running the command new fixture. And what new fixture does with the name that matches the command name that we're going to make is creates us two files. It creates us a file with our command in it and a file with our tests in it. And what we'll do now is, so what I was doing when you came in was setting up my API. And unfortunately, I managed to run out of credit on my Azure subscription. So I tried to set up a different one, which didn't quite work as I expected. Otherwise, this would have all been ready. So, split, thank you. On the left, we have our function. This is what's been created for us by new fixture. It says function get speaker beard and curly braces. That's it, it's done. On the right, we have this funky stuff for getting the current value of the path we're in and the current file that we're in, and splitting it out and taking away the tests so that we've got a name. Just leave it there. And it gives us a nice quick describe. So I'll describe. Now we can run a test. If we run invoke Pester in any folder, it's going to go through and look for any file that ends .test.ps1 with a capital T, and it's going to assume that there's Pester in there, and then it's going to run the Pester and give you the output. And as you can see, what we've got does something useful. False. True should be false. We get a red, we get a failure. Tells us how long it took to run our tests, and that we failed the test. Perfect. We failed a test because we haven't written any code yet. So let's start off by writing some code. As if by magic, over here we've just written some code to say, does my command exist? It, command name exists, with just a get command, error action silently continue. So this is a PowerShell way of suppressing our errors so that we don't get our test results completely overrun by a sea of red from a failing PowerShell command. Just keep that hidden away. And then we've got should not be null or empty. Should be something there. So now if we run our test, we've done it. There we go. Congratulations. So you've now learned how to do TDD with Pester. If you've written a test, it fails. You've written some code, it passes. Pretty much, that's it. But let's go on a little bit. In general, what I do is create myself a set of contexts like that. So I've got a test for my input. I've got a test for the execution, the path my code is taking. If I've got some if-elses or some switches, test where they're going to go, and test for the output. Probably it's where you're going to put most of your tests.
Are you testing that get speakable? Is that what you're testing?
I'm testing get speaker beard.
Oh, you are getting
Absolutely, yes. So this is the function that we're testing on the left, and this is our test on the right. It's all very well, but what is get speaker beard going to do? So what get speaker beard is going to do? Yeah, we've got no internet, so great. We're going to use the Cognitive Services API from Microsoft for no other reason than because it's fun and also free. And we're going to use the Faces API to analyze this page. And we're going to take each picture from this page, we're going to analyze it and see how good the beard is, how much beard there is on this page of speakers at an event in Portugal last year. And I'm sure you will agree that there's one particularly fabulous beard in there that I'm particularly proud of. So the first thing we want to do is we want to run a command that says when there is no speaker in the array, we should get a useful message. So we've already defined that we're going to put an input in there. And when we put the input in, if we haven't got something we expect, we want to get back this particular phrase. This is what has been decided by the focus groups, that this is the message should be given to our users for when we have not got a speaker available in our command. Have a look at our command. It's literally saying, run our get speaker beard with a value that I know is not available. And it should be no speaker with a name like that. You entered Chrissy Lumiere. That's exactly what we were expecting to get. Now, when I run that test, fails. We write some code to fix that test. We have a look at that. Very simply, gives ourselves a parameter of faces. And we've set our faces equal to get speaker face. Fortunately, the get speaker face function isn't going to work for me. So what I'm going to have to do is actually just move on. So what I would normally do is run this test, and the test will call get speaker face. Get speaker face will go off to the internet, it'll go to the web page of Tiger IT, get the speaker faces down, analyze each of them, show that, display what, analyze all of them, put all of the results into a JSON object, and then get speaker beard is going to make use of that JSON object to decide about whether the speakers have got a beard or not. Now, I can't run that right now because my API is not working, my internet's not working, everything's gone screwy. And normally I'd run the test and then turn my Wi-Fi off and say, well look, I passed the test and then it failed, because we should only be testing the code that we're writing. We should always write our unit tests in such a way that nothing external affects them at all. Right now, lack of internet and lack of API means that this test is going to fail, when actually I might have written the code that would mean it would pass. So we need to do a thing called mocking. Luckily, I've got some JSON already. So I happen to have some JSON already. This is what you get from get speaker face. As you can see, it'll give you the name of the person, Jaap Brasser. He's one of my friends. He's a Dutch PowerShell MVP. Helped me to write some of this. As you can see with the particular picture that you can't see with the picture that he's wearing. He's not wearing any makeup, so this is good. We're pleased about that. It did used to come back and resolve that he was wearing makeup, so I did take him the key. And it also gives us the URL of the image, so we can actually grab what image we've got.
So this is a manually cached copy of what you would have got back had it been working?
This is exactly that. This has been picked up from this JSON file here. And the JSON file is just some duff data that I've created, it's actually straight off of there, to enable me to mock my command. And I mock my command with that piece of PowerShell there. So I took the value from the actual website, I converted it to JSON, we had a depth of 5, and then we just did an out file to faces.json. And that means that I can mock my code like this. So now we've added another new command to our Pester test. It's called before all. I don't need to tell you what it does. Runs everything inside the curly braces before all of the tests. Surprisingly enough, there's one called before each. Come in. Which will run all of the code within the curly braces before each of the tests. There's also an after all and an after each to enable you to create and destroy whatever things you need for your test. All within the scope of this context block. If we put the before all up here, the describe level, then it'll be run for every single context block that we've got. Sorry, every single it block that we've got within that described block. And what we say is, set me the variable mock face to the content of the faces JSON file with a little bit of that to make PowerShell understand that this is a JSON object. And then we say mock get speaker face with whatever is inside the curly brace. Basically, when you're running this test, every time you see get speaker face, don't go and load the function, go off to the internet, grab the page, bring it down, analyze it with Cognitive Faces API, and then give me a JSON object. Just give me this. And you can fill that with whatever you like. And it then means that I can run this command. It's going to go to get speaker beard. It's going to fill in the speaker from the parameters that we've set. And it's going to set faces to get speaker face. And then go, hang on a minute, I don't need to do all that rubbish. I'll just use this mock. So now we run test. Test passes. Everybody knows all is well.
Can you nest the contexts because you have a context inside context?
You cannot have a context inside a context.
It's not sort of namespace equivalent.
No, no. You can have as many contexts as you like within a describe. You can have as many describes as you like within a file, but each of those are going to be their own scopes. So let's write another test. And this test is now going to be, in the end, it should return the beard value for the speaker. So we know that Jaap Brasser's beard value is 0.2 because we created it in JSON. And when we run our Pester, fails because we haven't got any values. We've got no code there to fix that. So as usual, we're going to write the code to fix our test. So if we have got something, just do the faces, where grab me that property out of the JSON, please. And we just keep adding ourselves further and further things within this as we go forward. So we can make sure that we've got a speaker name and a beard value and a URL if we provide the detailed parameter. So if we add that switch, we definitely should have all of these three things. Now, this is wrong. You should only test one thing and one thing only each time. Okay, you could write 3 of those tests and test the name and the beard and the image URL. But actually, my argument would be this is right. Because if I've got a detail, I want all of those things. Actually, it doesn't matter. As long as you make sure you do what is right for you, it's fine. Pester can do more than one test within an it block. Whether it should or should not is a religious argument that other people will have. Yes, sir?
Presuming that the test fails, is there any easy way to determine which of the assertions fail?
Okay. So, the thing about this is within this it block, everything should be the right value. So it only takes one of these to fail. And if one of them fails, it'll come back and say, I was expecting 0.2, but I got 100. Right? So you'll know where you are. If 2 of them fail, you'd get, I was expecting 0.2, but it should have been 100. You won't know which one of the other 2 it is that's failed. And we carry on. We write some code to pass our test, run our code, test passes. So now our code has, if we got a detailed, then do this, otherwise just do that. Bit of an expression just to make sure we've got everything that we expected. If we want to open our URL, we could just have a show image switch. And that's just going to start a start process. And this is pretty much just to say that you can mock PowerShell embedded commands as well as your own functions that you've written for yourself. So it doesn't matter what it is. If you mock it, Pester will return the mock. Just don't try mocking invoke Pester, because then it really gets itself in a twizzle. So we'll write ourselves a test to make sure that we've got everything we want. Can't remember what we're doing. Oh yes, we're making sure that our code follows a certain path. And if we have chosen to get our image URL, we want to make sure that we're going to use our show image switch. So this time we know what the value is going to be. The value is going to be 0.2. That's what's going to be returned from our function. We're not going to test that we get an actual image. We're testing the return in the console from our function. So even though we've put the show image switch in, what will be displayed on the screen will only be the output from the command. That's what we test there. We're going to check that if we use the detailed switch as well as the show image switch, that we're going to get those 3 values again. And now we're going to come up with something else. It's all very well mocking your commands, but you need to make sure that they have actually been mocked. Or if by mocking the command you're actually taking away some of the functionality and you're no longer giving an output that you expect, you need to make sure that you're testing that you're calling that command. And that's where we use assert mock call. This is called splatting your parameters. It's just a PowerShell way of displaying all your parameters up ahead of time so that you don't end up with dash command name, dash times, dash exactly, dash precise, because that makes it really difficult for people to change things. So we're just going to say, I want you to check the mock for get speaker face. It's only checking the mock. It's not, if you haven't mocked the command, it's not going to work. In fact, it's going to come back and say, no, I don't have a mock for that command. How many times? Well, I know that because I've run 2 commands within this particular scope, I'm going to have called getSpeakerFace twice. Exactly twice. If you don't put the exactly in, it will just go, I need to have 2. I could have 202, but as long as I've got 2, we passed. We're going to have run a getSpeakerBeard once there, and we're going to have run a getSpeakerBeard once there. And I could put those down here, doesn't matter. This is going to check the scope of that context, unless I add it there. If I put it equals true, then it's only going to check within the context of this particular it block. Make sense? And if we run our test, we expected it to be called twice, but it was called 0 times. Excellent. You notice that the other ones are actually lying to us. Because this test and this test was checking the output of the command. And the output of the command we've already written the code for. So we've already written the code to give us the speaker beard and the name and the URL of the image. That's all coming out with these ones. But the start process to give us the image URL is where we failed. If we want to write, should we run some code and fix the test? Let's have a look. There we go. All right. And here's the code we've written. Basically, if we've got a show image, start as a process, grab us that image URL out of our JSON object, and away we go. All of this was already written. So that's why those first 3 tests will all still pass it. Just something to keep your head around. Always know what is going to make your test fail, as well as what's going to make it pass. If we wanted to rank our beards, if we wanted to make sure that, that the top beards and the bottom beards were ranked in a certain way, we can grab the top 1 or the top 5. Expected to get a 1, we didn't get anything. We write some code, we'll pass that test. What did we do this time? This time we just did a count. And our count is of the number of objects that we come back. We're now calling getSpeakerFace as mock 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times now. So we need to check that we're grabbing those mocks every single time. Everything's groovy. So now we've written all of our tests to gather all of the information about these beards on this page. Or we've written the tests and the code to pass exactly what it is that the focus group says that we should do, the requirements for our project. A business analyst has spent many, many hours and days building us an Excel sheet to make sure that we have all of this information so that we can write this particular piece of code. So now we're done. Now we can just throw it away. Hand it over, great, excellent, everything's groovy. You could, if all your tests pass. I'd argue you shouldn't, because you haven't done some other things. First of those things is you haven't made sure that your code is following good practice. Good practice. Good practice defined by the PS Script Analyzer module, which comes out of Microsoft. It is the way of making sure that everything is as we should do. So PS use singular nouns. It has been decided by them, the PowerShell should only have singular nouns. Which means that when I connect to a SQL server and I do get-SQL database, I can get back 360 databases, which annoys me. But them's the rules. Everybody should follow those rules. We have a test for those rules. There's a lot of other good rules in there. As you can see, there's 50 rules there at the moment. There's going to be a lot more coming through with the new PowerShell core as well. And also, as you can see, I haven't actually passed all of these. So it says, PaaS is the PS script analyzer rule number 1. PS, avoid using command aliases. Do not use aliases in code that you share with other people. Remember this beard. And imagine how frustrated he was 7 years ago, searching Google for %sign. PowerShell %sign. PowerShell %sign in double quotes. PowerShell %sign in single quotes. PowerShell %sign. PowerShell. What the does %sign mean? Percent is an alias for where object. No, percent is an alias for each object. Question mark is an alias for where object. That one I might have got, but I drove myself absolutely 100% batty trying to work out how to use my Google foo to find what this meant. Please don't use aliases in code that you share with other people. All the time, use aliases on the command line to save yourself from typing things absolutely every single time. But remember, write your code like there's an axe-wielding, psychopathic maniac who knows where you live is going to be the guy in the job next after you. Nobody's gone, hang on a minute, where's the problem here? We don't really know, we can just see we're expected to get 0, but we got 2. Not really telling us a great lot, we failed the test. Script analyzer, instead of typing it, oh no, I am going to. Script analyzer, you just do an invoke script analyzer, you pass it the path of the script that you're analyzing, and it'll helpfully tell you much more information about this. So it'll say, avoid using command aliases, so there were 2 of them, both the same. The severity of warning, so it's not bad enough to really break stuff, but you should take notice. It's in the script get_speakerbeard.ps1, so you can run this against a whole folder if you want to. And it's on line 27 and line 36. And it says, select is an alias of select object. Don't use aliases because the beard gets really cross. No, well, that's what it should say. Now, if you're using VS Code, you would already notice that you've got a little green squiggly line under your select, and you've got a little light bulb. And the light bulb comes along and says, yeah, do you want to replace your select with the select object? Fix everything. So hopefully using VS Code means that you won't fall into that particular trap. But not every single one of the VS Code, of the script analyzer rules is going to be picked up by VS Code. You don't even have to think about testing, writing your tests for analyzing your PowerShell scripts, because somebody's already done it for us. It wasn't me, somebody else did this and I've just stolen it, made use of it. And there it is, one piece of context code that you can just pick in and push through to anything. And I make use of this, I use a module called Pester. So whenever I create a new module when I'm working, I just invoke Pester. It creates me all the framework that I need, including all the tests, the baked in ordinary tests for the commands I'm going to run. One of those is the script analyzer rules. So I can quickly run those through without even thinking about it. I don't even have to write it anymore. You pretty much all write things for other people. Yeah? Okay. So you've written a thing for another person, or another group of people, and after a while somebody comes back and says, The thing you wrote, it's not working. It doesn't do this, got an error. You get that? Yeah. So when they phone me up and they say, Rob, that module you wrote, this function, get speaker beard, I'm getting this error. I say, have you run get help, get speaker beard? They say no. I say, ching. Okay. Maybe I go, well, run get help, get speaker beard, and then put it down. The point is, don't create yourself as the support for your own code, especially with your PowerShell code. PowerShell has this brilliant ability to grab the help for your code and display it to the user, and all they have to do is type get-help and the name of the command. So, actually, let's make sure we've passed that test. There's a Pester test that has been written for this. If we want to have a look at it, here it is. June used to work for Microsoft in the PowerShell team. If you've opened PowerShell version 3, you have read some of the words that she's written, because she was one of the people that wrote the help for PowerShell version 3 and 4. Then she went to work for Sapien, now she's working for AWS. And she is amazing, awesome lady. And she's written this Pester test for us. So now we don't even have to think about whether we have created our help in the right way. We can just run this test and make sure that everything's there. I wrote 8 modules at the place where I'm currently working at the moment. Each one's got a couple of dozen commands in. I'm running this for every single command. I'm starting to get a lot of green and some red. And what happens is, you see this flash past green, 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 red. Green, 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 green. Gets to the bottom, it says, summary. 6,782 tests passed, 3 failed. All right, okay, great. I'll scroll up. Scroll up, scroll up. Oh, my finger's getting sore. Page up, page up, page up, page up. Above exception, out of memory error. So I know I failed 2 tests out of 6,700 and whatever it was, but I can't see any information about them. Invoke Pester has got a parameter called show, which is not even being shown. Got a parameter called show. And show is merely the output of the test's results to screen. It's not the tests themselves, it's just the results that come to the screen. So we can run a test with a show summary. It's running. All we get is 92 passed and 1 failed. It's not much use, is it? But it shows us what we can do. If we do failed, okay? Failed. It's pretty good. Gets example help from get speaker beard. Expected the value to not be empty. Now, if I've got 8 modules and I've got 100 commands, and maybe in 7 of those I've got something like server name should be always in little letters, and it fails on one of them, how do I know which one it is? So I say, don't use failed, use fails. Because what fails does is it gives you the describe and the context, and if there is a failure, it puts it in the right place. Makes it much easier for you to find out that everything is in the right place. So let's write our help files. We've passed our test. Oops. We've shown off our git lens. We'll run all of those tests. Expected value not to be empty, right? Okay. It's obviously because I didn't write the right bit of code. Test run, everything passes. The other advantage to the show is that that ran in 2.76 seconds. Whereas when we displayed all of the output, it ran in about 20 seconds. So when you're now doing more and more with this, and you're writing more and more tests, actually we don't care about what comes out on the screen. We just want the result, the object. If we load our module, load our function, now we can make sure that our users can help themselves. There we go. Get SpeakerBeard ranking from the Tutor IT website. Helpfully tells us that if we do a dash detailed, we can get some more information, including all of the examples. Always write as many examples as you can, with as many parameters and many switches, just to make sure that it really gives your user all of the information. So, because we don't need to show all of our information as the results of our tests onto the screen, but we might want to make use of them, we've got an output file and an output format. So now we can take the results of our test, even though we're only going to show the summary in the header, and we can put them into file. What have I done here? Oh yeah, that's an old way of doing it. Grab ourselves up. That's a really stupid. Yes, I hear the pizza call. I am aware of the pizza call. It's just XML. Results of all of our tests, just XML. You can see the name, see how long it took to run, see that it was successful, the result was a success. We can save them into a variable. Two more things, and then it's time for pizza. Test drive. We might want to work with files. So we can make use of a test drive variable, which goes to an actual file system somewhere in the attempt directory, which is created and destroyed at the beginning of each scope. So describe, context. This test drive will be created and destroyed, enabling you to create files as and when you need to, if you need to within your unit tests, without affecting anything outside. And in module scope, you can use in module scope within your Pester tests to put your mocks into that module rather than into a completely different, your scope of your entire script. So you can say only if I call this mock from within this module that I'm writing, then call the mock. If I call this command from outside of this module, don't call it. Go and get child item or whatever it is that we need to do. If you want to learn a lot about Pester, get the Agile Delivered Pester book by Adam Bertram, and there's some details. Windows PowerShell, PowerShell 2, please don't use 2, throw it away, disable it. 3, 4, 5, 5.1. Those are the ones that you're used to looking at in the blue screen with the white writing, or in ISE, what we've been seeing pretty much all the way through. That's been PowerShell 5.1. PowerShell 6, PowerShell Core, as you can see in VS Code, I can just select language mode, or select which language I want, and choose to have PowerShell Core 6. Now, you can get a pre-release version of any module that's on the PowerShell gallery if you have the latest PowerShell Get package. So in an admin session, you need to install module PowerShell Get, go to the PowerShell gallery, get the new PowerShell Get, and that will install it for you. And then you can install any module, but Pester particularly, and say allow pre-release. And once you do that, you can see that you've got PowerShell version 4.2. See, we've got all of the same functions that we had before. Still got a context, a describe, an it, and a should. But one of the beautiful things that we've got is I expected the strings to be the same because beards are awesome, but they were different. So the expected, the results of the tests, then the because whatever you put in, and then the result of the test that you get. So that means you can do things like this. One of these may not work because my SMB protocol module didn't load. I expected strings to be the same, but because we failed to bother to update the app and it only works on XP, they were different. Should be running as Rob XPS. Rob, yeah, great. This actually worked. Should have SMB1 enabled. Expected true because we don't care about the risk, but we got false. Obviously, jokey, made up becauses. But hopefully you can see that you can now begin to pick up why these tests have failed and give even more information, document your code even better as to why this particularly has failed in this way. Microsoft Cognitive Services does not recognize that as a face. So even though I wrote my get speaker beard, it will analyze all of these pictures and grab the faces out and give me a beard score. For my picture, gave me a beard score of 0. Which is quite fun. Green is good, red is bad. Before the break, green was good and red was also good because it was about writing our tests and making sure that everything was as we expected. This time, we're going to talk about validation of your environment. Still the same person, still doing the same things, still available on Twitter at SQL DBA with beard, still have a website of SQL DBA with a beard. There's a reason for that, and that is that when I changed my Twitter handle, I suddenly became SQL DBA with a bear. Because Twitter's only got a 15 character limit. So I stole that moniker and I make use of it in fun and interesting ways, but I am SQL DBA with beard on Twitter. And all the other things still the same. I'm still an MVP, still work with OSS software and projects and all of this community stuff that I love doing.
You no longer have a drone. You no longer have a drone.
But I no longer have a drone. A drone, that drone, that when I wrote this, crashed. It just flew into a tree. It was probably absolutely fine until it fell 40 meters down and then smashed on the floor, but it was okay. But I do have a new drone. So, today's list. Get up, drink coffee, and then the rest of the world can happen. Yes, I know this says drink appropriate liquid. That's because somebody complained that they don't drink coffee. So I embarrassed them by changing the slide at the time, and I will keep it there, won't I, Karen? And what I want you to think about for the rest of this session is how many checklists do you have in your job, in your work, in your team? And think about ways that you can use your checklists and turn them into Pester tests. Okay, so don't take what Rob says here as, oh, this is absolutely the way to do it. Take what Rob says here as, here are some things that I can use in my environment and I can make work in this way. So I bet we've all seen checklists like this. Incident response checklists, things we should do when stuff goes wrong at 3 o'clock in the morning, which normally are stuck on a share somewhere that we can't find because we've forgotten our login details to get to that place. Oh God, what am I supposed to do? Release checklists, making sure everything is in place before we move forward to release our next upgrade of the amazing widget that we've built. All of the change release ITIL management type checklists. About the first thing in the morning checklists. What about all of the things that you do when you get into work to make sure everything is as you expected? Maybe you want to make sure our build server is up and running. Make sure there are no failures in our unit test last night when everything ran through. All of those things that we would like to do automatically. Some good checklists. What about standing in front of about 30 people in Southampton, wanting to make sure everything works? Absolutely. As you saw, before the break, my API was in a subscription that had run out of credit. But I knew about that because I had run a Pester test for my environment. So I knew that that was a problem, and it enabled me to try and fix it, which I then failed to do. But no, then it breaks. At least I know that it's there. About standing in front of a client. Did a presentation about the new widget that we've just built. It's going to be amazing. Oh, this is the wrong version of the widget. Oh, nuts. I wish I'd checked that before I stood in front of them. Incident response, morning checks, first line support, everything else that you're thinking of. They're all good stuff. We know, because we talked about it earlier. Pester provides a framework for running unit tests to execute and validate PowerShell commands from within PowerShell. Great. That's brilliant. How is that helping us test stuff about our environment? Validate PowerShell commands from within PowerShell. Whatever PowerShell command I give to Pester, I can test the output of. Therefore, there are a whole bundle of things that I can test. We're not going to bother talking about how we look, what Pester looks like, because we've seen that this morning, felt like this morning, before lunch, before pizza. I must apologise. As you may have noticed from before pizza and since, I am not somebody who likes to give you PowerPoint slides full of text. However, sometimes you just have to give people PowerShell slides, PowerPoint slides full of text. These are our should operators. I'm not going to read through all of these. I'm going to let you read them. You can see what they are, you understand what they mean. These are the should assertions that are available to us within Pester when this was written. There's a couple more come through now. Ah, yes. The one I will draw your attention to is contain. What contain does not do is see if there is a member of an array. So you can't say, does this list of servers contain this particular server with your contain. Contain checks to see if a file contains a specified text. That may catch you out. It still occasionally catches me out. So beware of that one. But this is the properties of a SQL Server object, a SQL Server agent object, and a login object. That's all. So in PowerShell, in SQL Server itself, I can probably find another 300 or 400 properties that I can check. That's just in SQL Server. When you think about Active Directory and file systems, Azure, VMware, Hyper-V, you start adding all of those up, and then you put WMI calls in. There's pretty much nothing in a computer type thing that you can't validate. Pester, as we've seen, works on PowerShell version 6. That means you can check things on Mac, you can check things on Unix, all sorts of stuff. However, there's one thing it can't check. If you're going to Stuttgart and you're going to do a PowerShell Saturday and you take your Nook, and my Nook has got a domain controller and about 13 SQL Server images on it, and it can run all of them at once. It means I can show off, look at these scripts that run against all of these different versions of SQL Server and clusters and availability groups and all of these wonderful things. However, here is a Pester test, which shows us how we can do a contain. So we'll describe our backpacking. We'll have a context scope of hardware, and its bag should include Beard Nook. So our bag contents contains Beard Nook. That's just PowerShell. That is going to resolve to true or false. So we're going to say should be true. We don't need to say should be true. There's an assumption around that we're going to get if we just put a should, we wouldn't get a failure of our test, but we will put should be true because we want everybody to understand what happens. So I failed that Pester test because I couldn't actually run it, and when I got to my hotel room at about 11 p.m. and I got everything out to run my Pester test to make sure everything was working, I didn't have my NUC. Had the power supply, had the switch, had all the network cables, didn't have the NUC. So I've rapidly had to rewrite my entire presentation to make use of the fact I could only run about 4 instances of SQL on my box. So some of the things we can do is we can see if things exist. So we can check, for example, our servers. And we say this server returns a ping. We're going to test connection for a server name. Count of 1 with a quiet error action silently continue. We put error action silently continue in so that our results of our test are not confused with a sea of blood red of failed PowerShell. Maybe we want to check our operating system. It's just a WMI call. So we know that our version should be 10.0.16.299. It's easy for us to check. One thing I cannot test, that little moon there. Apparently, if you change a registry key, you can switch that quiet hours on or off, which means it's just PowerShell. I can connect to the registry. It just appears like a drive to me, but the registry key hack that they give doesn't work. So that literally is the only thing that I found that I have not been able to test with Pester, apart from whether I took my NUC to Stuttgart or not. Maybe we want to make sure about a particular text file is in place. Maybe our folder with some things in should have only a certain number of files. Maybe the exe should be of a certain version. We make sure when we go in front of our clients, show off brand new widget, that we're showing off brand new widget and not brand new widget version -1. Maybe we should say that our file has been created on this date. We know that we did the configuration file on the 18th of November. Therefore, that's when that should have been created. And it should not be modified since that date. I was sat in an organization where a business analyst had done some work, and then he came to the manager, and the manager was very cross. And he came out to the technicians and he was extremely upset because this process happened. A client phoned up the service desk and said, the thing is broken. Oh, okay, what's broken? Oh, it's saying blah, 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 blah. Service desk man went, or woman, went, oh, I don't understand what that means. Okay, try a few things, write it in the call, pass it to second line support. Second line support went, I'm really busy, I'll get to that in a while. And it sat in the queue for a week or 2 weeks. And then second line picked it up and they went, phone the client up, try this, try that, change the registry to this. Oh, I can't, I'm not admin. Okay, well try that. Oh, I don't know what it is. Oh. Second line went, I've got 150 other calls here, I'll chuck it up to third line. Third line were very busy. They were perusing the internet, they were reading Reddit, and they were making sure that the Nerf gun was in fact working. So they picked up this call right out of this, and they looked at the call and they went, oh, for goodness sake, they've changed the config file. What they should have done is given the call back to the first line support. The first line support should have phoned the client and said to the client, I'm sorry, you are not under support because you have altered the configuration file as specified in our contract of agreement with you. But of course, third line support might try that with first line support. First line support would phone up the client. Client would be really angry. You've had this for 4 weeks and you still haven't done it, and now you're coming back saying that this is ridiculous. So what third line support did is give the new config file, put it in the client's place. Oh, da-da, fixed. Great. Client's happy. Everybody's happy except for the manager. Manager was completely happy because there were no clients shouting at him until the business analyst said, hang on a minute, you're wasting all of this time and resource for something that is actually not under a license agreement and you shouldn't be supporting in the first place. This is ridiculous. Oh, how can we do this? That's how we did it. I wasn't even working on that project. And I went, well, you could just write PEST test. Oh, what? All right, PEST test. File should not be modified since this date. So we had a whole load of other stuff that we needed to make sure was right. We gave that to first line support. First line support, when they got a call, would say, oh, great, could you just download this, run this Pester test, tell me what it says. I come back and say, oh, it's green. Green saying the exe should be of this version. It's green saying the file should have been created in this date. It's red, it says the file should not have been modified since this date. Oh, I'm very sorry, sir. Appears that somebody has altered the configuration of your client. If you could reset it back to the original configuration, we can support you. But as it is in its current state, I'm afraid we're not able to support you. Suddenly everybody's happy, apart from maybe the first line support guys who had to have that conversation with the client. But no, that's okay. They'll grow up. They'll get used to it. Everybody's happy. Here is just one example of a way that you can make use of Pester to resolve an issue for your customers, for your clients, for your managers. But now imagine that you're a consultant and you walk into different clients, different times of the week, different weeks, and you're pretty much checking the same thing. You know, you're checking where the SQL Server is set up as it should be. You're checking whether your Azure subscription is set up in the right way, Active Directory is created in the right way. Whatever it is that you're consulting about, you're going in, checking the same sort of things, but different clients have different environments. So how do you pass in different things to these clients? So what you can do is make sure you're in the right folder. Yes, good. Load ourselves a function, and if we look at this particular function, not that particular function, if we look at this particular function, you see, got some good help, some good descriptions, because I do not want to be the person who looks after my code. I won't want to be the support, I just want to be the guy that writes it. Some examples, do some examples to make sure people know how to use the thing that we've written for them. And what this code is going to do, you can see there's a lot of it. Got some parameters, got loads of parameters. We're going to pass in parameters aplenty into this piece of code. For each server in servers, skip equals true. Remember that. That'll be useful in a minute. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a test connection, make sure that the server is online. We're going to do a test WS-man, make sure we've got some PS remoting capabilities. And then we're going to create ourselves a script block, which is going to make use of, go up a line, thank you, a return object, a PS custom object, just defined like that. This is a custom object with nothing in it. And then in that object, for say the backup directory, we're going to put in the results of the backup directory, querying our SQL Server. We're going to go through, we're going to make sure things are enabled and the frequency and the start times are all as they, what they are, place them into this object, just with some PowerShell. Because it's PowerShell, we can create anything we like. And at the bottom, we're going to invoke ourselves a script block. Go to our remote server, run this script, return me the object. Now that we've got our object, we can go through and say, pick that one. The full system database backup should be scheduled. So our return object, all assist full scheduled, should be true. The full system database backup should be scheduled with this frequency, which is a variable that we've passed into our function. So this value should be the same as the value we've passed in. So anything that we might change, but we can still gather in the same thing, maybe how often we take our backups. Maybe it's who are the members of the administrators on the local machine. But all sorts of different things that you can imagine that you might want to parameterize because you're going to different places. to save us having to put all of these parameters in one long line, try and change them, we splat them out into a nice column. We can change anything we want to. If our system full frequency job runs weekly, we can just change that to weekly and then run the rest of the command and everything will work. And what you're seeing there is not green is good or red is bad. You're seeing yellow is skipped. Because Pester is just PowerShell. So if we have some logic that we want to define, we can skip our tests as we need to. Because, as we've already discussed, I don't have a Nook with me. I didn't actually bring it. I deliberately didn't bring it. But I have no remote machines to run commands on, so I've just skipped them all so you can see what would happen. But you can imagine that I can quickly run all of those tests. If I wanted to go to a different environment and run them, I could just change the parameters, run the same piece of code. I don't have to worry about it. It's already been done. What about the other way round of thinking about it? What about if all of you wanted to write some PowerShell, some Pester tests, and you all wanted to do different things, or maybe your values for production are different from the values from UAT, the difference of values for dev, difference of values for QA, or SAT, or SUT, or all the other acronyms that we give to test environments that we want to create another one just because we think there's something else we want to test before we test stuff. Five, my word. Invoke Pester will run all of the files that end .tests.ps1 that are in a folder. By adding a tag of backup, we have only run the backup commands. If we look in our folder, we can see we've got one file with .tests.ps1. Inside that file, we've got a describe block which has a tag. Now I've got a tag of backup. So even though invoke Pester ran all of this code, it only ran the tests with a tag of backup. So you can write first line, second line, third line, prod, UAT, Active Directory, DNS, whatever tests with a tag, put them in the same place, source control them, anybody can run them with the tag. It's just one way of using it. I'd show you some more, but I don't have much time. Maybe you want to make use of some configuration. I just use some JSON. I pick a tag, tempDB, I pick some values that I can change and a skip as and when I need to. And I can skip various tests if I need to do so. It enables me to write different JSON for different environments, and we can just call them with a command. But I want to show you this, because this is cool. So I needed to check that every server in the estate, there are about 250, had all of those particular jobs, and each job had been enabled and scheduled and had run and had succeeded, and that each of those jobs had created a backup share for each server, and inside that folder there should be a folder for each database. Inside the folder for each database there should be a full, a diff and a log folder. Inside the full folder there should be a .back file within less than 7 days old. Within the diff folder should be a .trn file less than 1 day old. Inside the log folder there should be a .trn file less than 30 minutes old. Apart from all of the databases that were in simple mode, and the ones that were in log shipping, and the availability groups would be in a different folder. So as you can imagine, that was going to take me a fair amount of time to do for 200 instances and however many thousand databases it was. Check all of those files existed. So it's PowerShell. I just need to work out that logic. It took me an hour or so, and write a Pester test. And that meant that what I can do is run test olla instance, which is the function that I wrote, against these three particular instances at the moment, with a value of the share of the backup. And I can grab all of this, come back, okay. There we go. We're now checking that it has files in the full folder. And the log folder for worldwide importers has files in it. But it was written to within the last 30 minutes. It expected 30 minutes ago to be greater than the file that was in there. And because this is just PowerShell, and we get our results as an object, we can turn them just into a JSON object. And because it's JSON, we can create ourselves something beautiful. And if you go to my blog, you'll find a Power BI desktop file that will take any Pester results, if you format them in the right way. Some of them might not display quite as you want them to, but in general, they're going to look as cool as this. So we can see 507 tests, 43 seconds. Here are our tests that we've run. We can click into our tests. Because we're not online, we're not going to get all the values in there. Or maybe any managers in the room. Okay, if you just close your ears for the next 5 minutes, please. We all know what management like pretty pictures. Particularly pretty pictures that are interactive and stuff changes as they click on them.
And you get them to spend hundreds of thousands by saying, look, it's red.
Yes. And you can give them all of this and they will click on it and they might actually forget the fact or forget to ask, why are 8% of these red? Because they're so impressed with this, because you've created this amazing thing. And it is beautiful and it is useful and it enables you to maneuver this data around however you want. That is one of the beauties of PowerShell, that it enables you to go within a whole environment, whether it's Windows, Mac, Linux, SQL, Azure, VMware, Hyper-V. Test all of the things that you need to test, turn them into an object, which you could use in your CI/CD build process. You can put those XML results in to VSTS, for example, to give it the test results. Or you can create some beautiful Power BI that means that your manager doesn't actually hassle you for why things are wrong. Okay, manager, you can come back. Of course, this is all really useful as we explain for all of our managers. You've all got checklists. Don't do things manually if you can avoid it. Pester is a unit testing framework, but you can use it to validate anything you can gather with PowerShell. Describe, context, it. Don't forget to put the curly braces on the same line. I bet you put them on a different line just to see the error message. Should test your assertions. You can output to any unit XML for CI/CD. You can output to an object because it's PowerShell. You can do anything you like with it. But I think the best way is to output it to JSON and turn it into Power BI. I've been Rob. You've been amazing. Thank you.